Good day and welcome back to Mana Ministries, where we let the Bible interpret the Bible. So previously we started with Daniel 7 and we did the few first verses, sort of giving us more detail on this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had concerning the different kingdoms or principalities that would rule the earth. And, we sort of got an overview that, this head of gold was also a lion that had eagle's wings. Um, the belly and sorry, the chest and arms of silver was the Persian Empire, which was also likened to a bear. The Grecian Empire was likened to a leopard, of bronze, also having wings like a bird, but it was the wings of a dove, so it could never fly as high as an eagle. So it was lofty, it was high, it could reach the heavens, but it wasn't quite as high as an eagle. And then the fourth one we learned was the Roman Empire, having 10 principalities. It was iron, it was strong, and it was trampling the residue. It was killing and absorbing everything. So this week we're going to continue on that note, but we're going to spend the whole video focusing on a few verses because it's widely misunderstood. And if these verses are understood, the book of Daniel is going to make a lot more sense. So please join me in the reading of these few verses in Daniel 7, verse 9. I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was as white as snow, and his hair, the hair of his head was as pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, and its wheels a burning fire. So in verse 9 it says, I watched till thrones were put in place. So that translation there is not quite right. In fact, it's more something like, I watched until thrones were put out of place, until thrones were taken away, until thrones were thrown down. So what Daniel is saying, remember, he's in a vision, he's been taken into the heavens to God, and he sees these thrones being thrown off, being put down. So if I can paraphrase, Daniel is saying, look, I was caught up into the heavens in this vision, and I saw a court case. God being the judge sat down and he had a court case and he gave judgment concerning these four different beasts, these four different principalities or kingdoms. Now, you need to remember, Daniel was in a vision and he was in the heavens. This is not speaking of a one-time thing. He, in fact, saw each and every principality um, at court. In this court case, when God sat down and gave judgment concerning these kingdoms. So Daniel was not in time. Daniel went and he saw each and every court case and what happened afterwards. Okay? Because he was in this vision. This is not speaking of one single thing that Daniel saw. He is, in fact, saying in these next few verses what he saw concerning these court cases when God sat down in judgment against these principalities and gave ruling and took their throne away, took their dominion and their kingdom away. He overthrew them. This is basically what Daniel is describing here. So if we can have that picture and know what is happening, it's going to make a lot more sense. Verse 10. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 thousands ministered to him. 10,000 10,000s stood before him. The court was seated and the books were opened. So this speaks of myriads upon myriads. So it's more like 10,000 times 10,000. It's millions and millions of people ministered to God. And he was the ultimate judge. He is the king of all. And it says that the books were opened. So these are the books in judgment against these principalities. We can continue with verse 11. I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. Now remember, previously we heard of this little horn, and we haven't identified him yet, but we can learn here, we can see here that this little horn was speaking pompous words. And, we know that this little horn came after the fourth kingdom. So this just shows that Daniel was taken to the court case of after the fourth kingdom. This is not speaking of one single event. This is speaking of future event. Daniel witnessed it in a vision in the heavens. He wasn't actually there. He witnessed it in a vision. But it doesn't speak of the time of Daniel. This speaks of future. Um, of the pompous words which the horn was speaking, I watched till the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. So this speaks of the very last judgment, the great white throne judgment, because he was the little horn came up after the fourth beast, and he would be thrown into the pool of fire. This speaks of the last judgment. And you see that it does not speak of the time of Daniel. Daniel saw the future. But then he says something interesting, and this is very important to realize and to see from verse 12. He says, as for the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away. Yet their lives were spared or prolonged for a season and a time. So what he's saying is, look, I saw the previous four kingdoms court case as well, and I saw the judgment. Their dominion was taken away, but they were never thrown into the pool of fire. Why? Because it was not the end yet. You know, it was the head of gold. There was judgment spoken against him, and he was overthrown. He was not killed, though. He was just overthrown. Then the second one, you know, after about 400 years, there was a court case. God gave judgment, and they were overthrown. But the next principality, the next kingdom absorbed them. You know, this is why there's a lot of Grecian philosophy, for instance, in the Roman Empire. This is also why there was a lot of Persian influence in the Grecian Empire, and a lot of Babylonian influence in the Persian Empire. You know, they sort of absorbed them. So their kingdoms was overthrown when that happened, you know, in history, but they were not killed off. They were absorbed into the next one. Only at the last one, this little horn, only at his judgment was everything thrown into the pool of fire. That's basically what Daniel is saying here. He says, um, as for the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away in that court case. Yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of a Man, coming with clouds of heaven. And he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. So we all know that Jesus, you know, he rose, he ascended up with clouds after he was crucified. And we also know that one of Jesus' most famous sayings and favorite saying was, I am the Son of Man. So why did Jesus say that? Well, he was in fact quoting the book of Daniel. That was his favorite saying, the Son of Man. Why did he say it? Because Daniel called him a Son of Man. So whenever he spoke of himself as the Son of Man, he was actually quoting this Bible verse. So Daniel, remember, he's in the heavens at this time and at the time of this vision. Daniel, in fact, sees what happens, something that happened 2,000 years ago. He sees that Jesus rose with these clouds, meaning the witnesses or the saints of old, and he came to God up in the heavens. Daniel saw this, and he received the kingdom. Jesus received the kingdom in the witness of Daniel's sight. Daniel could actually see Jesus receiving the kingdom and Jesus sitting down at the right hand of God. So this is not speaking of a future event. This is speaking of something that already happened because of where Daniel was. He was in the heavens. That's why he saw Jesus coming with clouds and receiving his kingdom. It's important to see that. This is not a future event. This is not a prophetic thing. Back in Daniel's day, it was a future event, but this prophecy happened 2,000 years ago already. Okay, so it's not speaking of Jesus' second coming with clouds. It's speaking of the first time he ascended up into heaven. And they brought him near before him. Then to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed. So, you know, going back to Nebuchadnezzar's dream, you know, the head of gold and the chest and arms of silver, the valiant thighs of bronze, the legs of iron, and then the feet of partly iron, partly clay. But eventually there was this big rock that was not made by man's hands. You know, it was it came and it destroyed the statue. It threw everything in the fire. It made it dust. And this rock, Jesus, his kingdom would rule and reign forever. So Daniel gave us a perfect overview now and more detail concerning these principalities or these kingdoms. Now we know that we are part of that rock, because we are built on that rock, on that foundation. And if we are part of that rock, and if we are broken to look like that chief cornerstone, Jesus, we are part of that kingdom, and we will destroy the principalities of previous, the principalities that ruled us. We will take in this kingdom because God gave it to us. And it's so important to see this. It's so important to see who and what these principalities are and how we are to take in the kingdom and rule. Um, Unfortunately, there's some misconception concerning, especially these last few verses, um, people thinking that it refers to Jesus' next coming or it's his second coming. In fact, it refers to the day that he received his kingdom. So next time we will continue on and we'll get a little bit more detail concerning this little horn that speaks pompous words that comes up after these four kingdoms. Till next time, God bless.
Subscribe to our channel and hit that notification button. Let us take you deeper into the revelations of God. Keep on watching.